the start of Genesis chapter 6, there's one verse that mentions three very strange things. Some of you might already know this verse, but I didn't. Let me read for you chapter 6, verse 4, and I'll put it into context later. In those days were giants on the earth, and also afterwards, when the sons of God had come in to the daughters of men, and they had borne children to them. These were the heroes, who of old were men of renown. Giants. Who are these giants wandering around the earth? Where did they come from? Why are they mentioned here at the start of the flood story? And then there's the sons of God. Why are they getting on with the daughters of men? And then it mentions their children, a mix between humans and these mysterious sons of God. They're labeled as heroes or men of renown. So what's their story? What do we know about them? How do they fit into the rest of the Bible narrative? These three very strange references are all packed into this one verse. And if you read it quickly, you might not even notice how strange it really is. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Francisco. I'm carving the Bible in granite. And because that work is slow, as I do it, I notice things about the Bible that I find interesting. So I dig into them and then share those thoughts with you. I'm carving the Bible because I think that the way we preserve information in our modern world is extremely fragile, including the Bible. So I'm carving it into granite, the only medium that seems to stand the test of time. And if you want to find out more about this project, Carving the Bible, I'll put a link in the description below. So check it out when you finish watching this video. But in this video, I'm going to look at the giants, the sons of God, and the heroes. They actually turn out to be very important to the story of Noah and the flood. They make that story more understandable. Until I explored this verse, I really didn't understand the story of Noah and the ark. I mean, to me it seemed that God thought that the world was evil and that people were evil. He regretted his creation, and so he decides to kill everybody. Everybody except Noah and his family. Men, women, children, babies, all the animals, including puppies and kittens, everyone had to die. So that didn't really make sense to me. It seemed very strange. It just seemed a little bit crazy. I still don't really understand the story, but this one verse gives it more context, and I think you'll see what I mean as we dig into it. Speaking of context, this is a good moment to read the text that I am carving in this video. Genesis 6 verses 4 to 17, the beginning of the flood story. In those days were giants on the earth, and also afterwards, when the sons of God had come in to the daughters of men, and they had borne children to them. These were the heroes, who of old were men of renown. And the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of his heart only evil continually. And the Lord repented that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the earth, from man to cattle to creeping things, and to fowl of the heavens, for I repent that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is the history of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect among his generations. Noah walked with God. And Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was full of violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is full of violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. With cells shall you make the ark, and pitch it inside and outside with pitch. And thus shall you make it. Let the length of the ark be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A light shall you make to the ark, and to a cubit high shall you finish it above. And the door of the ark shall you set in its side, with a lower, second, and third story shall you make it. For I, behold, I bring a flood of waters on the earth, to destroy all flesh under the heavens, in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall expire. Wow, that's some start to a story. So let's talk about the giants. Genesis 6:4 says, "In those days were giants on the earth, and also afterward." The Hebrew word behind giants is Nephilim. And the word doesn't actually mean giant in the literal sense. It comes from the root NFL, which means to fall. So Nephilim could mean fallen ones, or maybe someone who makes others fall. Many modern Bibles do not translate Nephilim at all, just to avoid confusion. So why do some Bibles say giants? The translation comes from the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Hebrew Bible from the 3rd century BCE, which translates Nephilim as gigantes, from which we get the word in English giants. Please excuse my poor pronunciation of ancient Greek, but it really is not a language that I have studied. So who or what were these Nephilim in the Hebrew Bible? They echo myths from across the ancient Near East. In Mesopotamian stories, for example, there were beings like the Apkallu, sometimes I can't even pronounce it, semi-divine sages who lived before the flood. Another example is the Epic of Gilgamesh. The king is 2/3 divine. He's actually a cultural hero. He's super strong, part god, part man. All of these traditions celebrate great godlike figures before a huge catastrophe. But here's the twist. In Genesis, it flips the script, as it does in many other areas. In other cultures, these hybrids are heroes, legendary founders, mighty warriors, men of wisdom. They introduce culture and knowledge. But in Genesis, they're actually part of the problem. The Nephilim represent corruption, not glory. Their presence on earth is not a golden age. It's a sign that the created order is unraveling. Flesh has been corrupted, not just morally, but physically. The lines between human and divine, between heaven and earth, have been crossed. And the Nephilim, these so-called giants, are evidence of that cosmic corruption. They are not merely tall and strong. They're the symptoms of a broken world. So when Genesis 6:4 says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, it's not just throwing in a bit of myth for flavor. It's pointing to a type of cosmic crisis. Let's rewind a little bit and focus on one of the strangest phrases in the entire Hebrew Bible, the sons of God. This is what I found out. In Hebrew, the phrase is Bnei Ha-Elohim, which means sons of the God or sons of the gods. The same phrase is used in the book of Job to describe divine servants who stand before God's throne. Now, in the ancient world, this wasn't unusual. Across the cultures of the ancient Near East, people believed in a divine council, gods or spirits who served under a chief head deity. And here in Genesis 6, it seems like some of those heavenly beings didn't stay in their place. The most ancient interpretation was that these sons of God were a type of angel who came down to earth and crossed a boundary they were never meant to cross. To really understand how readers at that time thought about the sons of God and the so-called giants, it helps to look beyond Genesis to the book of Enoch. Now, the book of Enoch isn't in most Bibles today. It's not canonical, except for the Christian Church of Ethiopia. But in the centuries before Jesus, it was widely read and respected, especially among Jews living in the Second Temple period. In fact, copies of it were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the New Testament book of Jude even quotes from 1st Enoch directly. In the book of Enoch, the ideas of Genesis 6 get expanded. The sons of God are given names. They're called the Watchers, a group of heavenly beings who descend to earth. And their sexual relations with human women are described in more detail. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. Here's another quote from the book of Enoch. And all the watchers took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And the women became pregnant, and they bore great giants whose height was 3,000 ells. These devoured all the labors of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. So, in 1st Enoch, the Nephilim are the children of this union between the heavenly and the earthly. They're not just big, they're monstrous. Their birth is unnatural. Their appetite is insatiable. They consume everything, even turning to violence. The book paints a picture of the world falling into chaos, not just because humans are sinful, but because divine beings crossed a line and introduced corruption into creation. But it's not just about sex. The book of Enoch says that the Watchers also taught humans forbidden knowledge, things like weapon making, sorcery, astrology, and seduction, knowledge that humans weren't ready for. So these sons of God are not just mysterious characters from an obscure verse. They represent a cosmic rebellion, not by humans, but by heavenly beings. Their sin wasn't disobedience alone. It was the violation of boundaries between heaven and earth, between spirit and flesh, between order and chaos. And the result? Unnatural offspring, a corrupted world, and ultimately the flood. It's important to say that Genesis 6:4 does not explicitly say that the giants or Nephilim were the offspring of the sons of God and women. That elaboration exists only in 1st Enoch. Genesis only says that the giants were present on the earth at the time. So when Genesis says in chapter 6, verses 11 and 12, that the earth was filled with violence and that all flesh had corrupted its way, it's pointing not just to human sin, but to something deeper and darker, a breakdown of the entire created order, starting with the sons of God and ending in judgment. After the giants and the sons of God, Genesis 6:4 introduces one more group. These were the heroes who of old were men of renown. So who are these heroes? The Hebrew word here is Gibborim, a word that can mean mighty men, can mean warriors, champions, or heroes. In Genesis 6, these Gibborim are described as men of renown, literally men of the name. But here's the thing. Verse 4 links them to sex between the sons of God and human women. The book of Enoch later seems to combine the heroes and the giants into one creature. But Genesis doesn't glorify these heroes. Instead, it presents them as part of the problem. They may be powerful, they may be famous, but their origin is rooted in rebellion, and their legacy is tied to a world so corrupted that it had to be wiped out, that it had to be cleansed by a flood. Genesis 6:12. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. So, how did all of this, the sons of God, the giants, the heroes, lead to the flood? The corruption of the earth in Genesis wasn't only about violence or sin in the usual sense. Something deeper had gone wrong, something that affected the very fabric of creation. Genesis 6 tells us that all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. Now that's a striking phrase. It doesn't just say that people were behaving badly. It says that flesh itself, humanity, animals, the natural order, had become warped, twisted, disordered. What caused this corruption? The answer is boundary breaking. From the very beginning, Genesis has been a story about good boundaries. God separates light from darkness. He divides land from sea. He sets the sky above and the earth below. He makes animals according to their kind and humans in his image. Every part of creation has a place, a role, a boundary. But in Genesis 6, those boundaries are violated. The sons of God, heavenly beings, leave their proper domain and take human wives. Their unnatural unions produce beings like the Nephilim, part spirit, part flesh, who devour the world. The heroes are also born from this fusion, and they become men of great power, but not necessarily of righteousness. And the result is not just individual sin, it is cosmic disorder. This is more than rebellion. It's more than pride. It's the collapse of the structure of creation. The lines that God drew in Genesis 1 are being erased. And so the flood comes. Not necessarily as an act of divine rage, but as an act of reset, a cleansing of the canvas. The world isn't just wicked, it's been changed into something wholly corrupt and unholy. And so God will destroy in order to recreate. Here's from Genesis 6:13. And God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh is come before me." The flood will return the world to its primordial state, a watery deep, just like Genesis 1 verse 2, so that creation can begin again, this time with a righteous remnant, Noah. So when we read Genesis 6:4, with its strange mix of divine beings, giants, and men of renown, we're reading about a moral and spiritual crisis, a world that forgot its place, a world that shattered the boundaries between heaven and earth, between spirit and body, between glory and humility. And it's all hidden in that one verse, Genesis chapter 6, verse 4.